Okay, so good afternoon. My name is Daniela, and I'm a VR developer. I've been working with VR for some years now. I co-own a VR development studio. We develop both games and other sorts of applications, but with the focus on virtual reality. And and since I figured that I started seeing, I went to Meetup and I started kind of like checking who are you, and I realized that I think there's a lot of like mobile devs, web devs, lots of in-betweens of that, and I would like to focus this talk on maybe like the good parts of developing for VR, the frustrating parts of developing specifically for VR, and the ugly parts so you can feel better about your workflow. And I can also feel a little bit good about mine, and we can gossip a little bit about VR, as we know, like gossiping is good, makes us feel good. So, well, when you're developing for VR, like first things first, like it's difficult to test. We have been hearing a lot about testing, but when you're, especially when you're doing multiplayer, you have to get the headset on in order to see what's happening well. And if you are doing it in a multiplayer setting, you can't do it by yourself. You need another person to help you out. Otherwise, you only have two eyes, so you can see like what two headsets are seeing at the same time. Debugging also is, even though there are like amazing debugging tools that you can use to develop for VR, such as Unreal Engine, Unity as well, so on, it's very difficult to use those debugging tools in VR, like for the same reasons, like especially in multiplayer. Multiplayer is just makes everything harder. And yeah, I'm very cranky about multiplayer because I've released a multiplayer game some days ago, shameless plug, and multiplayer just really makes everything harder. And well, and you are developing, you are testing, and we have a lot of kind of preconceptions of how the world works, how things are supposed to work, and we are very comfortable in our own bodies. And when you're developing for VR, even as a developer, and I'm talking about the developer that has to try things on, we are very, very in our own bubble, and we sometimes forget that there are people that are way taller than us, way shorter, like with longer arms, shorter arms, different cognitive abilities, and we have to be very mindful of it. And if we are doing a multiplayer experience, for example, we have to think about things that probably, if you're developing for a mobile app, you don't have to, even if it's a very social mobile app, which is, what if people are in the same space and a person like harasses another person, like person starts kind of blindfolding another person, like in VR, like it's you have to be able to think about all these kind of antisocial behaviors and how can you, and you should really think about addressing them, because if you put out a product that doesn't address them, you might face a lot of backlash if something bad happens. And maybe you can take that for your marketing and your PR, and all press is good press. But if you can be 2 steps ahead, maybe you can prevent that from happening and prevent people from having even traumatic experiences. Like no one likes to be harassed, no one likes to be bullied. And yeah, it's one more thing that's to take into account. Another thing is sometimes when we are developing for other platforms, we are very task-minded. So we want to do this, so we're going to do this. In VR, like you want to make a task, for example, set this timer and rotate this timer, and you build this table, and all of a sudden you test it in VR, and you bring in people that have never seen this experience before, and they see a world, and they start wanting to do other things. And if, for example, they see this remote here and they can't pick it up, this is already completely broken. The experience, the magic, it's gone. And the thing that makes VR like very interesting, like the immersion, this sense of being in another place, is lost. So, yeah, that's another one that you have to take into account. And how can you do it? Well, it's hard because you can't think about everything, and your team doesn't have all the answers for this. So testing with a lot of different people, a lot of new people, you have to go out and try to get your grandmother. Your grandmother maybe can give you very useful feedback because she has different preconceptions of the world than you do. And those preconceptions are, sometimes it's really statistic. You really want to find the edge cases, because for example, with the game that I've just made, like it's a competitive sushi eating game for VR where you're a cat. Well, we have a standard way of picking up sushi plates and eating it. And one day I invited my sister to the office, and we have a button where you can kind of pick up a plate and eat with another button. I explained her the controls as I did to 50 people before that. And well, she picked up a plate with one hand, and with another hand, she started pressing the button, like eating like this. And well, I was looking like that. Oh my God! Like I've never seen that happening before, and it's working. And at the same time I was like, oh, that's a bug. It wasn't supposed to work like that. And then I was like, it's not a bug, it's a feature. Yeah. So, well, more things. Oh, everything debugging is, as I said, very difficult. Last year on Google I/O, they presented a tool for mobile VR in which you didn't need to package the game and then to transfer it with ADB in order to test. And if you are a mobile developer, you know that like you want to use the emulator. There are no VR emulators. You use the devices and you test it. It's really how it is. It's super direct. Yeah, and like, do you have any questions? Like, how can I make your day easier? Oh, developing at coffee shops. Like, I see a lot of people nowadays with beautiful MacBooks. If you want to develop it for VR, no, that's not your that's not your best bet. You shouldn't be developing at a coffee shop because you need to have the hardware with you first, and then probably you're better off at developing using a desktop, because it's just so much easier to just kind of make the hardware evolve with the technology and replacing the graphics card. If the graphics card burns, get a new graphics card. Increasing the RAM if need be. Also, some systems, for example, the HTC Vive, you need to have a fairly kind of stable system. You want to kind of put your lighthouses and leave them kind of be to be able to do day-to-day operations without a lot of trouble. Yeah.
We have, for example, for the web, like we have problems with IE, like with Firefox, with Chrome. Do you have that also with like the different Samsungs, the PlayStation VR, and with like HTC Vive, or what?
It depends, because yes, to some extent, but especially for the high-end virtual reality, there are less headsets, so there are less things to support. But every one of them will have its quirks. Definitely. But, for example, if you want to develop for Google Cardboard, expect exactly the same troubles with that you would expect with developing an Android application. Yeah, oh, sorry. Now I have 4 more minutes. Yay! For Android, I made once a mistake of releasing a Google Cardboard app and not doing a lot of testing with a lot of different equipments, and that was a very bad night, because I spent the whole night kind of trying to address bugs that only appeared in certain versions. Reddit was super nice for that, because the community was very helpful. It was also the beginning of Google Cardboard, so the community was very helpful. Maybe nowadays people wouldn't be as nice, but they were like, oh, like my phone is this model and this is happening, this is not working, and Daniela was like trying to figure out what's happening, and I have no way to test this now, and they were really helpful with that. But yeah, for example, if you want to do some sort of kind of room scale, if you have, for example, the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive, the 2 most common ones, you have to do a lot of kind of management to where things are and how you're going to place things in the world, because especially if you don't have locomotion, because, well, there's a certain spot where people can walk. And it's not, especially when we are doing these, designing applications, it's not unusual to have our office with a lot of kind of tape on the ground. We have those seamstress tapes, and we are really measuring things. We are really kind of taking the guy with the largest wingspan at the office and measuring, and it should be a little bit more like this. We have done some work with some applications that have the PC version and the HMD version, the head-mounted display version. So it's definitely possible, and it's also very funny, because those designing for the 2 really means like sometimes thinking about the whole user experience for one, for the screen, and for the desktop application. For example, if you want to do a 3D painting app, well, it's pretty difficult if you just have a mouse to get the sense of kind of 3D drawing in space. While if you are in a kind of VR room scale setup, like you are sculpting in space. It's really amazing, and desktop users are missing out on very cool functionality. I have a couple of Daniela's recipes for immediate kind of motion sick. So yeah, with great power comes great responsibility. Like if you are basically being able to control like what someone is seeing, you can make them feel very sick very easily. For example, if you change the horizon, so it's like if we grabbed this broom and we started kind of doing this, like most people can't handle that. But I find that the worst is by now I have like very good kind of sailor legs and very good kind of stomach for VR things, but something that when those kinds of very motion sick things are happening, like that's not really what affects me. What affects me if it's whether I have an objective to do in the world. For example, if I know that, okay, like I have this roll like all wobbly, and I know that I have to test like going from A to B or doing something, because I just want to test it. I have to trigger that thing because I have to see something happening. Yeah, that's just terrible, because you put yourself through it. And don't do it. Don't do it. Yeah, but you have to be very careful in not making people sick. And there are a lot of guides online on not to make people sick, like don't do acceleration. Platform holders are also getting very conscious in giving kind of, in trying to like give your app a rating according to the type of locomotion it has, whether it has acceleration, like quick changing images, those sorts of things. And we don't want to make people sick, but at the same time, there are people that can stomach some things better than others, and those are those that want to have the roller coasters and do all the daredevil things. Those are the ones that would also go to Disneyland and go through all the rides, and not everyone can do that. Yeah, so I guess that was it, unless you have more questions, and if you do, we can also like talk afterwards. But I think the time's up. Yeah.